Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Wednesday, the 12th day of November, 2025. It is Wednesday of the 32nd week of the year, the 32nd week in Ordinary Time, as well as the memorial today of Saint Josaphat. Who was he? Very interesting kind of a name. He was a priest of the Ruthenian Catholic tradition in the 1500s into the 1600s, and he lived in a time in which there was great conflict between the Eastern Orthodox Christians and the Eastern Catholic Christians. So in the Eastern Church, there were those who maintained an allegiance to the Holy See, as opposed to those who departed from that with the division of the churches in 1054, and Constantinople went its own way and Rome went its own way. They both excommunicated each other, but it led, unfortunately, to a lot of strain and tension among national peoples who themselves became divided between those who wanted to maintain an allegiance to a pope in Rome, and those who wanted to maintain the allegiance to Constantinople and to the identity of the Eastern Church in that way. And so Josaphat, in trying to preach union and trying to preach, is in some way a seeing to the good of being united again as one Christian church within Europe, unfortunately falls upon a lot of people who disagree with that, and unfortunately they put him to death in 1623, I think it is, on November the 12th. Again, those who work for unity sometimes, do not often achieve the end of their goal and may be punished for it in some ways, but it does not mean that we stop working for unity and stop trying to remember the fact that we are a divided church, and a divided church is not necessarily a good church. A church with different ideas is very, very good. A church with different ways of practicing is very good, but if we remain divided based upon ridiculous precepts, if somebody said something of somebody that somebody didn't like, that's not enough to maintain a kind of division as kind of exists today. Again, Paul VI, even John Paul II, tried to work to heal that, and by and large, they have. And so we continue to work forward for more union among all the Christian traditions that exist today. So, coming to you from my room at Holy Name College, where I am in an interesting situation for the next couple of days. So you'll see different sites around this college and around Silver Spring, Maryland, where I am now. So, but anyway, the Book of Wisdom continues, and today we hear basically God challenging again those with might and power who think that because they have might and power, they act out of wisdom, which God is quick to remind them they don't. Just because you have might and you have power does not mean that you always act out of wisdom. And at many times your wisdom may be curtailed or may be challenged because you are so resting on your might and your power. An important thing to think about, that all of those, even within our church itself, those who exercise power and authority are doing it sometimes to protect themselves rather than to do something good for those in their care. And the Book of Wisdom today guards against that. Again, it's like those who, who are perhaps in a lower state, who try to act with wisdom and fail, may be treated less severely than those who are in a higher state and don't act with wisdom and basically work against wisdom. They will be put to the test, God says. And that is the thing that unfortunately will happen, is that those people who, again, think that they have everything in their midst because they have been given this power and they are working, fully in God's plan, may really have to examine that to make sure that they are, and not working with their own plan or a plan that's been put into their head by others. Again, it's a very, very important realization that sometimes we have failed to recognize. But just because you have authority, power, just because you have a title, does not mean that you act with wisdom all the time, and that you may be doing your actions out of fear or out of hatred or out of distress or some kind of anxiety that may not always work well for those in your care. In Luke's Gospel today, we've already heard this on a Sunday. 10 lepers are cleaned. One who is not a Jew comes back to say thank you. And Jesus asks, where are the other 9? Why didn't they thank me? But the understanding is that the one who was not a Jewish person, the one who was not an Israelite, who comes back to recognize, the fact that God has done something great in curing this leprosy, is basically a marker for, again, the power of God to do good work for anybody and at any time, in any place, in any whatever it is. And sometimes, again, we fail to recognize that too, because we think that God only works for those that God, that do what God wants, or that God has designated as special, or whatever it is. We, especially as Catholics, can never ever think, or Christians can never ever think that God likes us better than anybody else, because sometimes we can become very complacent, in our relationship with God, and feel no need to thank God, even for the smallest of things that we experience in our lives. But sometimes it is those, again, who have no knowledge really of God, but who somehow experience God's love and God's wonder, can show us the true means to gratitude and the true means to a fullness of life. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.